Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about the running yearly ROI for Bitcoin. I think this video is especially important for newcomers to the space. We did this video a few weeks ago. I think we need to do an update, and we want to really break down what the chart is showing, because if you don't actually take a minute to think about it, it can be misleading. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 260,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So this chart here shows the running 1 year ROI of Bitcoin. And what it shows is what we've always discussed. It's that each time we basically continue through our journey with Bitcoin, our cycle, whatever you want to call it, we're unable to put in 1 year ROIs higher than prior tops. Okay. Now, one thing I should say is that people will probably confuse this chart. This is not the price chart. This is basically the current price divided by the price a year ago. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we have to think about what was going on with Bitcoin a year ago. What was going on? Well, in late March, it was after the capitulation down to $3,800, the price of Bitcoin started steadily going up. Therefore, in order for the 1 year ROI to continue going up, it would have to go up quicker, much quicker than it did back then. This chart is 2 weeks old. This is what we showed. And we said, you know what? It's crunch time, because we're going to have to start performing incredibly well for this to continue going up, because we knew we were coming to the capitulation. The capitulation meant that when you divide that number, when you divide a high number by even a lower number, the result goes up. It skyrocketed because of the capitulation a year ago. What happens if we update it? First, let's draw the line, see our points. That's what happens if you update it. Just a brief pullback. What does that pullback mean, though? Well, the price of Bitcoin didn't even have to drop for it to pull back. Why? Because, again, the price of Bitcoin was going up a year ago. So we know that a year ago, the price of Bitcoin was more or less just steadily going up until about $10,000, which it reached in the summer, and then it went sideways for a few months. So in order for the ROI, the 1 year running ROI of Bitcoin, to stay above 10x by this coming summer, it would need to go to $100,000. Is it possible? Of course it's possible. But you just get an idea of what it would need to do to stay at that level, because you're looking at the price with respect to where it was a year ago. Okay, so what does this show us? Diminishing returns. This is another chart. I've not broken it down by cycle. It simply is the price today divided by the price a year ago. Nothing more, nothing less. We're not arbitrarily picking starting points or anything like that. It's just a window, a 1 year running ROI. And what do you see? As always, what we expect, diminishing returns. Why? It's harder and harder to move the market cap up another 10x. It just becomes harder and harder to do it. It takes more volume to continue going up that curve. So we look at this chart and we say, well, if we were to come back down, if we came down quickly, what would cause us to come down quickly on this chart? Well, the obvious thing would be a Bitcoin correction, which is what we've just got, and we could continue to experience one. But you see that it had a sharp pullback. Why is it so sharp? Well, it's because a year ago the price of Bitcoin was going up really quickly. Today, it had a nice pullback, right? I mean, it dropped like 8 or 9% yesterday or so. So we know that it's going to drop quickly if Bitcoin's pulling back, because it was also dropping a year ago. If the price of Bitcoin were dropping today, but it was dropping a lot quicker than a year ago, then the ROI could actually be going up. It just depends on what the reference point was. And we know the reference point is going up, because starting a year ago, this is when really we really kicked off the beginning. I don't really want to say bull market, because at the time we were still under the 20-week moving average. We hadn't even had a golden cross yet. But we look back on it and we say, okay, well, it was the beginning of the bull market, and then we confirmed it a few months later. So we look at this chart, we say, well, does it make sense? Makes sense so far. Diminishing returns. Okay. Could this happen? Yes, it could happen, and it would stay in the same line of thinking that, yeah, we could do something like this. We could also come back down and then go back up. We could have a major move down. The point is to remember that in order for us to stay at 10x, the price of Bitcoin has to go up relatively quickly. And the 10x area is currently where we are this year. So in 2018, you can see it was maybe 25x or so. But in 2021, it looks like our 1 year ROI, running 1 year ROI, seems to be capping out at about 10x. So what does that mean? Well, if Bitcoin, we know that Bitcoin went to 20K back at the end of 2020. So for the 1 year ROI to remain at 10x by the end of 2021, it would need to be at $200,000. Okay, so you get an idea of how hard it will be to continue to move up, because we're going to be comparing the price to ever increasing valuations of Bitcoin from a year ago. So this time next year, when we're looking at March of 2022, we're going to be comparing the price of Bitcoin then to what it is today. For it to be up 10x, what does it need to be? About $500,000. So I don't think Bitcoin will be $500,000 next year. I think that Bitcoin will trend to $500,000, but it's going to take a lot longer than that. So what do we look at? Well, we say, well, what could happen, right? What could happen? Well, we could have a pullback like we had in 2019. We moved up in 2019. We had then a pullback. We moved back up again going into early 2020. We had a major pullback again. Back up. If we had a major pullback again, what would it mean? Well, for instance, if we know that in 2020 the price of Bitcoin was more or less just going up, if in 2021 we're unable to accomplish that, I know a lot of people think that that's going to happen, and I would say there's a high probability that the price of Bitcoin will continue to go up in 2021. But if it doesn't, then this will come down. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the price of Bitcoin has to capitulate to $10,000 or anything like that. It's just that you're going to be comparing it to a valuation from a year ago. Okay, so for the valuation to stay above 1, then a year from now, the price of Bitcoin needs to be around $50,000. Because if it's much lower than $50,000, then we're going to be heading south. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so if we were to pull back, let's say Bitcoin did pull back. I don't know what's going to happen in the short term. I don't claim to know. I think anyone that does is fooling you. We don't really know what's going to happen in the short term. It's a random walk, geometric Brownian motion. We cannot know what will happen in the short term. And I would say if anyone did, then they wouldn't be telling you about it. So what could happen though? Let's walk through a possible scenario. Well, if it were to pull back to say 40K or something, I don't know. And we just consolidated for a while, or even if we stayed at 50K for a while, then maybe later this year we go back up and then we come back down. But if we're thinking about the 1 year ROI and we see a peak later on, we might be comparing it to, say, this level, which might represent closer to, a 5x or so, maybe a 6x, a 5x or a 6x. So, I mean, if the price of Bitcoin were to have a major capitulation back to, say, I don't know, $30,000 or something, and then a year later, the price were able to go up 6x from that point, then that could still get us to $180,000. Okay, so just because this trend line is decreasing doesn't mean that you can't still experience good returns in Bitcoin. It just means that you probably should recognize that the 1 year ROI return will probably be diminished from prior tops. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, this has nothing to do with cycles. We're not breaking anything down into cycles here. It literally just is the running 1 year ROI. This is the running 2 year ROI. Why do people need to see these charts? Well, let's keep going. And I think you'll see why newcomers should see this chart. 2 year running ROI. You can see it's more or less the same thing as the 1 year. It doesn't go down as far, but it goes up higher. Okay, each time. Extension from the 2 year to the 1 year is higher, 2 year to the 1 year, 2 year to the 1 year. The 3 year running ROI looks pretty good, doesn't it? Started off at a modest 4,000, 5,000x, all the way down to maybe 50% loss over 3 years. But then if you had just held through that 50% loss, you would have been witnessing about an 80x on your 3 year investment just about a year later. Not too bad. And then back down, and then we're slowly going back up. The 4 year running ROI. What do you notice? Let's remove everything below 10x. You look at this chart, you say, well, no matter when you buy Bitcoin so far in its entire existence, if you bought it and held it for 4 years, you would have been hard pressed not to be up at least 10x. Okay, so if you're here to day trade, if you're here to to click on these other people's affiliate links and leverage trade, because they don't really care what happens, they just get paid either way. So if you're tempted to do that stuff, I would take a step back. I would look at the charts and say, you know what? There's an easier way to do this. There's an easier way to navigate crypto. You can take profits when it goes up. You can buy back in when it goes down. But should you be selling at losses constantly, like a lot of people are doing? They buy in, they sell it a few weeks later at a loss, and then it goes back up. They keep rinsing and repeating the cycle. Time is on our side. Whether you look at the grand scheme of the market cycle, or you just look at the entire history of Bitcoin and you don't care about market cycle peaks and valleys, time is on our side. And those that hold through dips and through the years do fairly well. Now, personally, I do like to hold some Bitcoin. I do not trade Bitcoin that I have not been holding at least a year because I don't want to pay short-term capital gains. But I also like to take profits occasionally, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? There's the whole hodl meme or hodl meme. It's just nothing more than a meme. And I think that, if you've been sitting on an investment for 3 or 4 years and you're up 10x, 50x, 100x, something like that, is there anything wrong with taking profits and using that money to change your life? I don't think there is. Doesn't mean that you have to be sad if the price of Bitcoin goes up. Just means we only have one life. And you wanna sometimes use the money that you're making in crypto to improve your life and not just watch it go into a black box that you never actually draw anything out of. So I use crypto personally it's almost like a secondary income stream, right? You invest in crypto, you ignore the dips that take you below what your cost basis was. You continue to DCA you ignore the people telling you it's going to go to some ridiculously low number. Eventually it goes back up. Maybe you take profits, maybe you don't. You just keep rinsing and repeating the cycle. Okay, so hopefully this is informative to newcomers to the space. Look at the long term. Don't get so absorbed in what's going on in the short term. If you want to take profits, you can. I like taking profits along the way just so I can put it in other investments that are not up 30x or something, 20x in a very short period of time. Diversification is how you preserve wealth. Concentration is how you can grow it. Sometimes I think it's good to concentrate on things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and some of the altcoins we talk about. That's what we did in 2019 and 2020. Things are going up in 2021. Doesn't mean you have to continue to FOMO in. Diversification to preserve it. Concentration to grow it. A macro perspective to keep your head on straight. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. We have the premium list, altcoin season sale. It will end on the last day of March, okay? So we've been talking about this nebulous sale ending for a while now. I was gonna end it about a week ago. We had people having issues signing up because there was a lot of traffic. I think we got that worked out. It'll end the last day of March. So if you wanna get in at the lower rate, check out the description below. Go to the premium list altcoin season sale, sign up. You'll get access to weekly reports and videos, the premium Telegram alerts channel, the Telegram chat room, the risk dashboard, the Into the Cryptoverse app, the premium only live streams, and more. Make sure you guys check it out before the prices go up. If you guys like the content, again, subscribe to the channel. Let's go for 260,000 subscribers. Give the video a thumbs up. Click the bell icon to turn your notifications on. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will see you next time. Bye.